Hey folks, I'm here with Stephen Driscoll, who won the Australian Christian Book of the Year this year. A great book, and one that is both encouraging and a little bit challenging as well to read, Made in Our Image. A great book. Tell us a little bit about why you wrote this book, Stephen, and what your aim was in writing it, apart from to scare people such as myself.
Yeah, probably scaring people was the main aim. I guess there are two other aims. One was I think we in the church are often a little bit behind in figuring out the new technology. Our kids might be getting their main gospel content from TikTok, but we're still figuring out Facebook. Or the smartphone could be causing an anxiety epidemic. I don't know, but we don't even know what our kids are doing on their smartphones. So we're usually a little bit behind. And I wanted to try and help us get up to speed with AI. But perhaps my second goal was to demonstrate that the Bible often has more wisdom to offer than we realize. That even something as modern as AI, well, the Bible has all sorts of things that it can say that are really helpful as we think about the topic.
Yeah, and the subtitle, God, Artificial Intelligence, and You. Uh, well, that's encapsulating it all. But the big question for me as a child of the 80s and 90s is Terminator 2 upon us? It feels like we've heard a lot about AI. What's the best and the worst of it in coming down the line for us? And what do you say in the book? And have your fears increased and have your hopes increased in the time since?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I wrote the book, ChatGPT was kind of inept and it would say just terrible things all the time. And it's a lot better now, I have to say. I can't tell you whether Terminator 2 is upon you, but something like 1.6 billion people are now regular active users of large language models. And that's an outrageous number of people. And the third highest use case is people trying to find purpose. So I actually think this is possibly the biggest religious kind of outlet or platform in the world already, just 3 years after it was launched. I think there would be tens or hundreds of millions of people reading about Christianity on ChatGPT, and probably millions of people trying to learn about the gospel. It might be the biggest evangelistic platform in the world already. So that's got to give you a
Yeah,
bit
that's
of
a bit of
hope.
hope. Yeah, there
Yeah,
is definitely
that,
hope.
that would be
Yeah.
the good side of it. On the other side, I think these technologies, um, because of human sin, often bring out various broken aspects in us that I think for every one technology that supports community thinking, there's probably nine that support individualism, that support materialism, that support
Hmm.
selfishness, or that divide us from each other. Um, that would be the negative case. And of course, human sin can take it to all sorts of extremes. AI will probably be used in war. AI will definitely be used by authoritarian states to suppress the people in them. AI will be used um, to indulge the flesh in all sorts of different ways.
Yeah, and that's reading it. Clearly, it's a Christian book, and there's something Christian about why you're writing it. Why is it particularly good for the church to be reading about it? Because you've raised the theological issues there that perhaps the likes of Peter Thiel, who's one of the advocates of it, who's doesn't have the same framework. He may not have the same concerns about it as we would as Christians. So, good book for Christians to read in that light.
Yeah, I think so. I think that our framework is really helpful, and there's so many people thinking about AI right now, but they're just thinking about it without any biblical help. I think thinking about it biblically is such a big help. We know kind of what the good is. We know how God designed the world, what the world's like, what the good life looks like. All these sorts of things that other people don't necessarily don't necessarily have. I did write it for Christians, but I love it when I find out that there's a non-believer who's reading the book. There's some people out there, maybe someone's uncle or something like that, that doesn't want to come to the gingerbread night again. But yeah, they're interested in the topic of AI, and they think, oh, I'll read a book about AI. I know it's a Christian book, and bit by bit they're seeing the wisdom of the Bible or the truths of the gospel through this topic.
Yeah, that came through actually. That it's obviously a time where people are reassessing meaning and purpose, transcendence, all those issues. So there's something about a Christian book that people can pick up, and the title "Made in Our Image" very provocative, right? So there's a derivative aspect of this. Um, what about AI being made in our image? Are you unpacking in the book that's problematic?
Yeah, so to train a large language model, you need a lot of language. You need a massive amount of language that it can kind of work through, make predictions, and it sort of learns by training. We don't have a large data set of human beings using language in a way that's consistently holy, righteous, and good. We just don't have that. We've got various levels of debauchery. We've got some quarters of the internet that are better than others, but it's all flawed. It's all
Mm.
tainted. It's all got kind of total depravity written all over it. So as large language models train on human language, they start to try and mimic human language. They inculcate in their weights, in their neural network, an understanding of human language, but therefore an understanding of human nature. And they start to that they're actually modeling the human vices. They're modeling envy. They're modeling jealousy. They can do a very good copy of any of those things, and the debauchery and the pride and all those sort of things are there in the weights of the neural network. Now, basically what we do is we try and polish that out a little bit through a thing called reinforcement learning, where we try and adjust it and we say, that's a bad answer, don't do that again, do this instead, do that. But then it becomes a people pleaser. You're switching it over from this
Yeah.
debaucherous internet mimic to a full-on HR department who's trying to please you without regard for the truth. And we're trying to find a place between these two extremes, but either way, it's tainted by total depravity.
I'll riff on that a little bit. Um, there are clearly going to be bad faith actors in the world who want it to, who go, can you create some sort of AI that has no empathy towards human existence? Surely that's part of the struggle.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And there will be many AIs out there, and there will be some AIs that are made by hostile actors. I can't see terrorist groups making their own AIs because of the scale
Yeah.
of what we're talking about. But nation states could make their own AIs. They could have their own truth. They could tailor them in a particular way. And you're right, military AI could be designed in such a way that it really doesn't have any empathy. Very intelligent, very good at seeking its objectives, but no sense of regard for human life.
Yeah, it sounds like a Black Mirror's episode all the way down, doesn't it? In that sense,
Mm.
and look, what I appreciated about your book too is its biblical theology framework, and that we know the Bible's leading in a direction towards an eschatological hope. And often the things I see in the new technologies, especially in the AI, is the cultural hopes for the future that we're heading to. What hope is AI giving in a world in which our biblical understanding of the hope of the future, Jesus' return, the renewal of all things, the putting the bad right, the sorting out sin and judgment and salvation. What is AI's hope, and how is that uh, playing into our fears and hopes in the world?
Yeah, you look at someone like Ray Kurzweil, and I never know how to pronounce his
Oh,
surname,
the
so you might.
singularity guy.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
singularity guy. I mean, he's been at it for a long time, but I think he's taking something like 70 pills a day. So he is trying to put off death in the hope that he'll live to the singularity, to the point where all problems of health and wealth and freedom are solved, and he just needs to make it there. That's a very strong hope in the future, and the technology that's gonna create those outcomes for him is ultimately artificial intelligence. And there's many people who feel that way, that AI is our final technology that will solve the greatest problems that we confront. Not just health or wealth, not just economic problems, but political problems, the environmental problems we face. That AI will ultimately be able to fix all the brokenness of the world. In some ways, then it starts to resemble some of the other kind of optimistic utopian ideologies of the 20th century,
It does, yeah.
or earlier periods. You know, the French Revolution or communism.
So it doesn't have
There's
a theology of
yeah,
sin in some of those issues, does it? So it's sort of
yeah,
in
yeah,
one sense, the 20th century was, especially with our technologies, the scientists who should be the most rational are the most optimistic, and the artists who should be,
yeah.
the sort of a little bit playful, are the most pessimistic about these things. Are you a bit of an artist in this or a bit of a scientist, do you think? A bit of both?
Oh, I haven't really thought about it that way before. I'm a pessimist, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm an artist or maybe more on the scientific side personally.
Hmm.
Either can be deceived. The artist can come up with this vision of a grand world and just omit sin. You know,
Hmm.
it's just problems are easy to solve when you take the when you take sin out of
Yeah.
the. It becomes very simple. You go, well, we'll just get people will just do this and they'll do that, and then but you got to keep putting sin back in the picture. So whatever beautiful picture you have of an AI fixed world, all right, but what about sin?
Yeah.
We may end up wealthier, sure, but more anxious, more individualistic, more hedonistic. Um,
That sounds like the second half of the 20th century and the start of the 21st anyway, so in the West.
yeah, yeah. I mean, if that's been an established trend,
Yeah.
and that's what previous technologies have done, then your assumption should be that would continue.
Yeah.
Uh,
Now, the sentience issue is interesting because uh, the book made in our image, but we also have Jesus, who the Word became flesh, and that's an astonishingly radical notion in the world. How does uh, that Jesus knows who we are, that God knows what it means to be human? How does that balance out the sentience fear that we might have about AI, and how does it? Uh, how does the incarnation help us have hope that there's something different about us, even if it does become sentient?
yeah, I'll talk about sentience first. I'm not sure. I'll try and get the incarnation in there, but that's a hard one.
Yeah.
Sentience first. Well, I think that human beings are made out of more than just the physical. We're more than just rocks that have been arranged. Genesis 2 verse 7 says that God makes the first man out of the ground, the Adama, but then he breathes his spirit into the dirt, and the dirt becomes a living being. And so I think human beings have two sides to us. There's kind of a spiritual side to us, and there's kind of a physical side to us. And you don't have a person, you don't have a being unless you have both. It's not to diminish one or the other. It's just to say that we've got these two things
Mm.
going on. We've got God's spirit animating us and giving us life. Whereas I think that AI is a purely mechanical, physical thing. It's rearranged sand. It's kind of put together in a very intricate way, and it can produce incredible results, but it doesn't have a being. It doesn't have a soul. It shouldn't be voting or anything like that. It doesn't have moral rights and responsibilities. So I'm trying to create a really clear line. So I'm actually saying it will never be sentient the way I'm using the word. It will never be sentient. I would say it can be self-aware, just in the
Mm.
sense that it knows a lot about itself. It knows
Yeah.
more about itself than we know about it. So it's aware of itself, but it's not sentient, if I can use that in a more kind of philosophical sense. So it doesn't threaten human identity in that sense because it's never going to leap categories and become one of us. That's not
Mm.
what it is. It's still on the machine or the physical side of the great divide.
Which kind of
How do
answers the
yeah,
incarnation question a little bit, doesn't it?
okay.
Yeah, because
Hmm.
God did do that.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
it's interesting, and this is a riffing. This is perhaps a smuggled in question, or I read it the other day on Twitter, which I don't use very often actually. I'm just too despairing. Someone saying that when AI models are fully sentient, then to kill an AI model would be worse than killing a baby in the womb. And
yeah.
that's the category error you're talking about ethically, isn't it? There's
Well,
something
that's
really
yeah.
despairing about reading that.
I think that person's cheating a little bit because they're comparing killing an AI to killing a baby in the womb. But yeah, Peter Singer, for instance, kind of has this scale
Mm.
of how important you are based on how conscious and aware
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
intelligent
yeah.
you are, right? And so he starts to compare things on that scale and to say, well, this is more important than this, and so on. But um, AI is going to be more conscious and more intelligent than the smartest person on earth. So are they gonna be more morally are we gonna be like the ants, morally speaking, in terms of our significance, and the AI will be the significant moral entity in the world that we all have to care about? Um, if you follow kind of the Peter Singer kind of materialistic logic too far, then AI will be not as significant as us, but way more significant than us. We'll become like, chickens in a factory feeding farm in terms of our significance compared to these incredible beings.
I feel like that sometimes already, so I'm not looking forward to anyway.
Yeah.
No. Well, so I really liked the way you conclude the book with a lot of hope, and also a lot about the Christian life in community together and how the gospel shapes us. What comfort and challenge does the gospel give us going into what is a rapidly changing moment in society?
Yeah, I'll answer in a sec, but one thing I want to say is it's not unprecedented. There's always been
Mm.
technological change, and we don't want to flatter ourselves and think that we
Yeah.
live in this particularly like if you're born in the year 1900, you had a First World War, a Spanish flu, a Second World War, the invention of the nuclear bomb, the rise of communism, all sorts of different things. You started off on a stagecoach, and by the time you died, man was on the moon. So it's not unprecedented. And in some ways, the life of Daniel parallels that sort of a trajectory where you have these different technological kingdoms rising up one after the other, and they just totally reshape the whole world in front of him. So then, what's the counsel of Daniel? The counsel is, keep trusting God. The end will be good, and
Yeah.
so if it's not good, it's not the end yet, and just keep
That's a
holding
great,
on.
yeah, that's great.
And then at the end of the book, Daniel goes, can you please tell me, like, I've had all these visions, I'm very confused. Can you please tell me, like, in simple terms, what's going to happen? What's the future going to be like? And I think rough paraphrase would be God says, no, go away. And then the book just finishes, and that's the end of Daniel. But you've got to have
Mhm.
hope, you've got to have faith, and you've got to keep waiting for the eternal kingdom.
And that's a good hope, I think, for Christians as we and a recommendation, I think, for anyone who's in ministry to read it and just say when people come to you with pastoral questions about these things, that's a really good. The gospel framework will change it. Here's a question to finish that I didn't put on the page. What appendix chapter would you have put in, given the time between when you published and now, and how things have moved? Is there something else you would have liked to have said?
There's all sorts of technical things that have progressed a lot since the end of 2023. I'd love to have put those in, but the more important thing is that we are hitting all these practical issues that were theoretical when I wrote the book. But now it's like, oh yeah, we've got pastors writing sermons using AI. What do we think about that? Okay, our Bible studies have been written. What do we think about? What do we think? It's all very real now, and it's hitting all sorts of different industries.
Yeah, that's a big issue. That's worth thinking and worth discussing. I think in church, what happens when your pastor pulls out an AI sermon? That worries me, but we will see how it goes. Stephen, it's been great to chat with you. The book was, for me, it was a page turner and well worth being Australian Christian Book of the Year this year. And it's sparked a lot of interest, and I think it's going to be a platform for something that other people will want to use that as a reference point going forward. So thank you for writing it.
Thanks.
Thanks, Stephen.